I knew something was off the moment Ethan called the server room, the internet basement, and asked if we could just add more megabytes to fix latency. That should have been my first warning that the upcoming investor demo was on track for a flaming disaster. But no, my real clue came 3 days later when Mark, my manager with all the emotional range of a parking meter, told me to sit outside during the biggest investor pitch of the quarter, while the CEO's son presented my work. Picture this. I was 3 sips into my burnt office coffee, running QA on our real-time analytics dashboard before the investor meeting, when Mark strolled in holding his styrofoam cup like it was a trophy. His eyes slid right past me as if I were an unplugged printer gathering dust. "Hey, Lauren," he said, smirking like a raccoon that just found an open trash can. "Ethan's going to handle the demo today. Big optics play. Investors love seeing the next generation involved. We'll just need you to, be available. Maybe wait outside the boardroom." I blinked. "Available? Where exactly?" He chuckled. Just around, in case something needs plugging in. There's a special kind of rage that bubbles when someone talks to you like a sentient surge protector." I smiled. Tight, polite, corporate. "Sure thing, Mark. I'll be available." As I packed my laptop, I caught Ethan practicing buzzwords like he was auditioning for a middle school spelling bee. Elastic infrastructure? No, wait, scalable throughput. He adjusted his tie and winked at me like we were in on some inside joke. We weren't. He didn't even know what throughput meant. That's when it hit me. This wasn't oversight. This was erasure. But I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I walked out of that office with the calm only a woman who's been underestimated for 15 years can perfect. By the way, if you've ever been sidelined like that, go ahead and hit that like button, because 90% of people who watch stories like this never subscribe, and it really helps the team keep shining a light on these glorious implosions of corporate stupidity. Back to Mark and Ethan. What they didn't know was that I had been laying bricks in the foundation of that dashboard for years. The back end? Mine. The permissions architecture? Mine. The live graphs that would be dazzling those investors? All routed through credentialed query chains that would silently expire unless re-authenticated by the root token, something that lived, funny enough, inside my encrypted keychain. But sure, send in Ethan with his perfect smile and freshly printed business cards that still smelled like Office Depot. I could have made a scene, called Mark out, reminded the room that I'd been up till 2 a.m. 3 nights straight tuning the anomaly detection engine to avoid false positives. Instead, I sat in the lobby, quiet, composed, and watched from my phone as the internal metrics dashboard started logging queries from the demo server. It actually made me laugh, not the warm kind, but the one that comes when the universe hands you a match and an open field. The investor deck they were using still included the live demo environment. Mark, in his infinite wisdom, had told Ethan to just click around and talk confidently. Ethan, human LinkedIn post that he is, agreed. Neither realized that without my certificate, those graphs were programmed to time out after 60 minutes of non-root validation. And guess what no one had? I checked the logs, saw the timestamp ticking down like a countdown in a spy thriller. Then I tucked my phone away and went for a walk. There's a difference between being invisible and being underestimated. They thought I was unplugged, forgotten, just a tired IT woman in flats and an oversized hoodie. But I wasn't gone. I was just waiting. Mark didn't even have the decency to lower his voice when he told people he was streamlining the team. I was still finishing my final notes on the authentication handler, because yes, even an hour before the pitch, I was cleaning up their mess, when he popped into my cubicle like a discount jack-in-the-box. "Hey, Lauren," he started, voice soaked in fake warmth. "Small change. Ethan's going to run point on the demo. Execs think it'll land better if he walks them through the platform. Family vision, legacy, blah blah." I just stared at him, blinking slowly, like my brain was buffering. He grinned wider. We still need you nearby, of course, in case something hiccups. Maybe hang in the lobby. Be our tech backup. Tech backup. I closed my laptop, stood, and smiled. Not the fake workplace smile. The one that means something's about to detonate. Of course, I said. Wouldn't want to interfere with the legacy. Mark nodded, pleased. He didn't realize the countdown had already started. I walked past the glass boardroom slowly, calm as a shadow. Through the pane, I could see Ethan already inside, flipping through the investor deck on the massive 4K screen, reciting buzzwords he'd stolen straight from my documentation. Cloud-native scalability, he said, like a kid reading a foreign language phonetically. He had my diagrams, my dashboards, my months of sleepless architecture work on full display. And he had no idea that everything he was bragging about ran through a system that would soon ask for an admin certificate he didn't possess. That's when I smiled, the quiet, dangerous kind. When I built the demo environment, I built it the way I built everything. Secure. Not just to keep out hackers, but to keep out idiots. The real-time graphs were wired to a live data stream requiring tokenized authentication every hour, tied directly to my admin chain. The visualizations? Connected to a cloud runner I had sandboxed months ago, separate from the shared DevOps paths. Why? Because Mark once tried to override a credential and nearly took down our entire QA system. They thought they could parade the dog and pony show without the dog. Cute. I took a seat in the lobby, not near the windows, not by reception, just far enough to see the boardroom's reflection in the glass doors. I could make out Ethan's gestures, wild and confident, explaining event triggers to a room of investors who probably thought latency was a fancy word for patience. Mark was there too, nodding along, adding meaningless phrases like data optimization, and Lauren's done a great job getting us here, as if I were some loyal intern instead of the architect who carried the company's entire infrastructure on my back. My phone buzzed. Slack notification. Mark 12:57 p.m. Keep your phone nearby in case we hit a glitch. Just in case. I set the phone face down. You know what that moment felt like? Watching someone try to hotwire a spaceship with a coat hanger. They didn't understand what they were stealing. They just knew it looked impressive on a slide. But I wasn't angry anymore. Anger takes energy, and they weren't worth any more of mine. What I felt was colder, sharper, like a surgeon prepping for incision. I'd been humiliated by men like Mark and Ethan for most of my career. Men who assumed quiet meant weak. That politeness meant obedience. That because I wasn't loud, I wasn't watching. I sipped my coffee and glanced at the big screen above reception, the one streaming the live dashboard feed for the investors upstairs. Looked great. Clean data, responsive graphs, perfect colors. But I knew better. That timer was ticking, and the system didn't ask for permission before it expired. It just stopped. By the time I got home that night, the silence in my apartment felt electric. I dropped my bag on the couch, peeled off my blazer like it owed me rent, and stared at the microwave clock. 8:13 p.m. All I could see in my head was Ethan's smug grin as he pointed to my diagrams like he'd drawn them himself. My jaw ached from clenching. My hands still shook from restraint. I thought about what I could have done. Walked into that boardroom, unplugged the HDMI cable, watched the chaos unfold while sipping coffee like a queen of petty revenge. But instead, I just sat outside, while a nepotism case study in khakis took a bow on my behalf. That's when my phone buzzed again. Sasha. Tell me you didn't just let that frat boy take credit for your system. I smiled weakly, half-eaten pint of peanut butter swirl ice cream in hand. Waited outside, I mumbled through a mouthful. She groaned. You should have burned the building down, or at least posted something spicy on LinkedIn. I've got templates. Something like, today I was reminded that silence in the face of theft is complicity. Boom. Viral. I laughed, but it came out hollow. Yeah, and then what? Get 35 likes, a pat on the head, and still be jobless while Ethan updates his resume with my code? Sasha sighed, softer this time. You're not jobless yet, but you need to do something, Lauren. You don't just let people steal your oxygen and call it mentorship. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about quitting, really quitting, walking away from the late nights, the fake smiles, the coffee breath stand-ups, the endless talk about visibility. Maybe I'd freelance for a nonprofit, hike a trail, disappear. Let Mark drown in his own incompetence. I even opened a job board tab, scrolled through listings asking for rockstar engineers and data ninjas. I closed it again. Then I opened a different folder, one I hadn't touched in months, buried deep in my personal drive. Inside was a single PDF titled, "If They Try This." And that's when my heart started pounding. It wasn't a revenge plan, not exactly. It was a contingency blueprint, a quiet insurance policy I'd been updating piece by piece for months, long before Mark's smirk became a daily occurrence. Flowcharts, dependencies, token access paths, fallback credentials, every digital artery of our system mapped and labeled. I'd started it the first week Mark suggested Ethan should get more hands-on experience. Something in his tone that day made my instincts flare, like a smoke detector before the fire starts. At the center of the flowchart was a red box. Critical path, backend certificate token, private root key required. Below it, in my handwriting, stored locally only. No cloud backup, no admin override. That last part was important. Because if Mark ever decided to cut me out, there'd be no shortcut, no way to fake my credentials or bypass the system. The infrastructure would simply stop listening. I sat back in my chair, sipping cold tea as I stared at the chart glowing on my laptop screen. A memory surfaced. Maya, my old boss and mentor, the only leader who ever treated me like a person instead of an extension cord with Wi-Fi. She once told me during a late-night rollback crisis, "You don't need to yell to make people listen, Lauren. Just make sure that when they stop hearing your voice, they feel the silence in their bones." At the time, I thought she meant it metaphorically. Now I understood. I didn't want chaos. I didn't want to burn it all down. I wanted clarity, precision. I wanted them to see exactly what they had erased and feel the weight of that absence. I wanted the silence to echo. I closed the file, walked to the kitchen, and refilled my mug. It was past midnight. The glow from my monitor lit up the apartment like a low-grade aurora. I wasn't quitting. I was preparing. And the best part? The timer on that demo dashboard was still ticking, quietly, invisibly, toward a reckoning no one else could see. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of stillness that felt like armor. I brewed strong coffee, sat cross-legged at my kitchen table, and logged into my GitLab account. The real one. Not the sanitized team sandbox Mark thought I worked from, but the root branch buried under personal keys, admin-only labels, and two-factor tokens only I could generate. The project list loaded. Years of commits, every major feature tied to my name, each credential group, each permission container, each authentication scaffold, authored, reviewed, approved by me. I scrolled, tracing the history like fingerprints on metal. They never noticed how I had structured it, that the entire platform's core authentication was split into 3 independent permission trees: DevOps, System Admin, and Redline QA. It looked like a security measure. It was, but it was also a control mechanism. No single person could escalate privileges without touching at least 2 nodes I managed directly. Elegant, safe, and utterly invisible. I smiled. A small, sharp smile. Remembering something Maya once said, leaning back in her swivel chair during one of those long debugging nights. "You don't have to bark to bite," she told me. "Just keep the leash in your hand. That way, When they forget who trained the dog, you can let it off. At the time, I thought it was a joke. Now, it felt like scripture. Mark could take my title, Ethan could parade in my slides, HR could scrub my name off the project wiki, but none of them could change the fact that I was the one who built the backbone they depended on. Every digital pulse still flowed through my keys. Every query still whispered my ID. The infrastructure didn't care about job titles. It only trusted credentials. I didn't delete anything, didn't corrupt the system or reroute a single file. That would have been too loud, too obvious. Instead, I made one surgical change. I disabled a single fallback permission, an obscure little script I'd written years ago as a safety net for live demos. It existed to keep the system alive in case the main authentication failed. A quiet hero that once saved Mark's career twice without him even realizing it. Now, that script was gone. The rest of the system remained untouched, humming peacefully, unaware of what was missing. Like a body still breathing before it realizes its heartbeat has stopped. I drafted a message in my Notes app, the first draft of my exit strategy. To legal@heliondata.com. Subject: for distribution only if requested. Attachment: audit logs, credential assignments, Slack transcripts. I didn't send it. I just saved it in a secure folder, synced to my encrypted drive. People think sabotage looks like explosions. It doesn't. It looks like a quiet checkbox, a disabled line of code, a missing key no one notices until everything stops breathing. I closed GitLab, took another sip of coffee, and exhaled. The leash was still in my hand. And the dog? It was starving. It arrived as a calendar invite. Subject: org realignment update. Required attendance sender. HR. I almost ignored it. I was halfway through debugging a latency spike on the West Coast node, half a bagel in one hand, and Mark's half-baked Jira tickets in the other. But something about the subject line, it had that blandly cheerful corporate bullet vibe that always hit a knife. So, I clicked. The meeting was set for 4 p.m. No agenda, no prep materials, just a link and the words, "All technical staff required." At 3:58, I joined. The HR director appeared first, smile frozen like she'd practiced in front of a mirror. Mark sat beside her, hands clasped, face gleaming with false confidence. "Thanks everyone for joining," HR began, her voice too chipper for a Wednesday massacre. "We're excited to announce a new hybrid leadership model to support Helion Data's growth and investor confidence." The slide changed. I didn't need to read the names. I already knew. New leadership model: Ethan Walker. Acting Director, Platform Strategy, Mark Davis, VP, Product and Infrastructure. My name wasn't there. Not even a thank you footnote. Mark took over, his tone a strange mix of corporate fluff and cowardice. "We deeply appreciate Lauren's past contributions in building the real-time platform," he said smoothly. "But as we move toward investor alignment and optics optimization, this transition ensures we're presenting a unified narrative." Translation: we put the CEO's son in charge and hope no one notices it's all cardboard and lies. Someone in the chat dropped a congrats Ethan emoji. HR smiled harder. My inbox pinged. Slack notification. System alert. Channel permissions updated. Admin panel access revoked. Another ping. Console privileges modified by admin. Mark D. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared as my workspace sidebar began to shrink before my eyes. Dev channels gone. Audit logs gone. System console dead. But they missed one thing: the skeleton key. Years ago, I'd built a separate pipeline. Not out of paranoia, out of survival. When you're the only one keeping the product from collapse, you learn to build lifeboats nobody else can sink. Mine lived deep in a sidechain of our cloud infrastructure, disguised as an obsolete schema maintenance fork. No one ever questioned it because no one ever understood it. Asking would have meant admitting ignorance, and Mark was allergic to that. I opened it now. Everything was still intact. Tokens clean, certificates verified, permissions unaltered. It wasn't routed through corporate SSO, it was routed through me. And they'd forgotten I existed. The irony was delicious. Mark thought he'd locked me out by stripping my access. He didn't realize I was the one who built the locks and the keys. I could have wiped the entire system right then, let the dashboard collapse in real time. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was deliberate. So I didn't destroy anything. I simply removed one certificate, the backup key that authenticated the live dashboard's data feed. I didn't delete it. I archived it in my encrypted drive, right next to my resignation letter. One clean copy, air-gapped, local. Then I closed my laptop. Not slammed, not thrown. Just a quiet click, like a door closing behind you for the last time. The air in the room tasted like stale betrayal and recycled oxygen. Somewhere in a Slack thread I no longer had access to, Mark was probably congratulating himself on streamlining processes. Ethan was probably practicing the difference between latency and throughput. HR was writing a press release about the next generation of innovation. And me? I was preparing to vanish so cleanly they'd spend months trying to figure out why the foundation was gone while the walls still stood. There's a certain peace in watching your own erasure, especially when you're the one holding the eraser. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a new message from Mark, time-stamped 2:11 a.m. Hey, Lauren. Just wanted to double-check that the back-end infra is ready for tomorrow's pitch. Everything good to go, right? No greeting, no thanks. Just desperation wrapped in fake professionalism. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The system was already in motion, and they were walking into the fire in gasoline loafers. At 10:03 a.m., I walked into a cafe across from the office, ordered a dirty chai, sat by the window like any other overworked woman who definitely hadn't just watched her career get hijacked by fools in khakis. Through the glass, I could see the third-floor conference room, Mark's kingdom. Ethan stood there in front of the investors, clutching a marker and his overconfidence like weapons. Meanwhile, I opened my phone and did something radical. Booked a 90-minute massage. Deep tissue. Full silence. No tech. I left the time slot unblocked on my calendar. No out of office. No fake meeting. Just available. Let them sweat. I scrolled through my phone, confirming the spa appointment. 90 minutes. No calls. No Slack. No guilt. Just quiet. I deserved quiet. I watched the office across the street, third floor, all glass and hubris, where Mark and Ethan were already gathering investors around the big display. From this distance, they looked like little figurines in a snow globe, trapped in their own narrative. I checked my phone one last time before silencing it. The live demo had started at noon. That meant the dashboard's authentication timer would expire at exactly 2 p.m., give or take a few seconds. Ethan, of course, had no clue. He probably thought the system worked like magic. He always did. I turned off notifications, tossed my phone into my bag, and headed toward the spa 2 blocks away. The receptionist smiled. Any tension spots we should focus on? I grinned. Just the back, I said. Been carrying dead weight for years. She laughed. I didn't. As I lay on the massage table, the world dimmed into warmth and silence. My muscles ached with years of unacknowledged labor. Every overtime, every stolen credit, every fake smile that kept the machine turning. I let it all melt under the therapist's hands, each knot releasing a piece of the rage I didn't need anymore. Somewhere, a Slack notification was probably pinging. Mark, checking on me. HR, confirming optics for the investor press release. Ethan, maybe rehearsing buzzwords like real-time adaptability or low-latency framework. Words he couldn't define, spoken to people who didn't care. I didn't need to see it. I already knew the script. Because here's the thing about the platform I built. It had a heartbeat. Every 60 minutes, it pinged the root certificate for re-authentication. No heartbeat, no access. Elegant, invisible, completely undocumented. Because if you've ever worked in tech long enough, you learn one rule. Never give a fool your manual. At 2 p.m. sharp, that heartbeat would stop asking politely. And when it stopped hearing me, it would shut everything down. I closed my eyes. The clock was ticking. Across the street, in the Helion data boardroom, the presentation was in full swing. Investors leaned forward, nodding, smiling, watching the real-time dashboards glow with performance graphs, uptime statistics, and predictive analytics, all powered by systems that lived and died under my credentials. At 2:03, the first flicker appeared. The graphs slowed, barely noticeable, like a buffering stream. Then, a delay in the data feed. Ethan didn't notice at first. He was too busy gesturing with his laser pointer and throwing around words like machine learning optimization. Mark noticed. He leaned forward, squinting, his rehearsed smile faltering for half a heartbeat. He whispered something to Ethan. Ethan nodded, clicked the mouse, kept talking. At 2:06, the data stream began lagging in earnest. The investors noticed this time. The line graphs stuttered, the bars stopped updating, and the glowing real-time analytics banner looked suddenly ironic. Mark's smile froze, his hand twitching toward his laptop. Sasha, my friend in DevOps, later told me it was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Mark's face turned pale. Ethan tried to refresh the visuals. Nothing happened. Then, at 2:08, the dashboard froze completely. No error message yet. Just stillness, the kind that fills a room before panic breaks. Ethan kept talking, his voice shaky, while Mark pretended everything was fine. At 2:09, the screen blinked. A gray modal popped up, centered neatly in front of everyone. Real-time dashboard authentication expired. Token not found. Silence. Then a nervous laugh from one of the investors. Ethan's voice cracked. Little hiccup. Probably a caching issue. Mark leaned over the laptop, smacking the trackpad like it owed him loyalty. The modal reappeared, unwavering. Token not found. An investor, older man, tailored suit, tilted his head. Is this what your clients would see if your platform went offline? The question landed like a bomb. Mark stammered. No, it's just the demo environment. Sandbox, totally isolated. He grabbed his phone, dialing. It went straight to voicemail. Because my phone? Still off. Back in the spa, the therapist pressed down on my shoulder blades, her voice calm. You're really tense, she said softly. I know, I murmured. Not for long. At that same moment, across the street, Mark tried to log into the admin console. Access denied. He tried Ethan's credentials. Nothing. He called again. No answer. Slack DMs flew across screens, frantic, desperate. Someone pinged it. No response. The dashboard blinked again, once, twice, and then went dark. The investor's smiles vanished with it. I exhaled. The system wasn't broken. It wasn't hacked. It was simply asking one silent question. Is Lauren still here? And when the answer came back no, it obeyed its final command. Stop trusting everyone else. At 2:12 p.m., Helion's $40 million investor pitch flatlined. The dashboard's 4 beautiful panels, each meant to show uptime, latency, security, and predictive analytics, went blank one by one. No flashing red, no dramatic alarms. Just still white boxes with one gray banner repeating like a pulse gone cold. User key not found. Mark froze. His hand hovered over the keyboard like maybe, if he didn't move, the data would come back out of guilt. Ethan kept clicking aimlessly, muttering tech terms like magic words, refresh cache, reconnect pipeline. Maybe it's the endpoint latency. He looked like a college freshman trying to reboot the moon. Across the table, one of the investors, a woman in a navy blazer with the posture of someone who funds empires before lunch, leaned forward. "So," she said coolly, "what happens when your real-time systems lose authentication?" Mark smiled, a crack forming under the strain. "That's just our demo environment. We can, reset it." He pulled out his phone, dialing again. Straight to voicemail. He tried Slack. No green dot. No reply. He even pinged the emergency DevOps channel, the one I'd quietly rerouted months ago to archive-only mode. In the spa lobby, I sat in a white robe, sipping cucumber water. My phone was dark in my bag, blissfully silent. The sunlight outside hit the glass just right. I could see the office tower's reflection. Behind those mirrored windows, they were unraveling. At 2:20, Sasha started live texting me from her personal phone. "Sasha, 2:21. Mark just told an investor it's a network handshake issue." Sasha, 2:22. "Ethan said the database is resyncing itself." Investor guy opened his laptop and streamed CNN to prove the Wi-Fi works. "I'm crying." Sasha, 2:24. "HR's whispering something about optics." One investor just asked if the original engineer could be reached. I smiled, stirring my tea. The original engineer sounded like a ghost story now. By 2:30, the panic had matured into denial. Mark tried using his credentials on the admin console. Access denied. Tried Ethan's. Same thing. He snapped at the junior analyst to call whoever's on duty. "Who's on call?" she asked nervously. "Lauren," someone whispered. "She's not involved anymore," Mark snapped. "Just fix it." They could call all they wanted. The leash was still in my hand. At 2:41, the system attempted an automated fallback. It reached for the secondary OPath I'd deleted 2 nights before. When it didn't find it, the environment defaulted to its final protocol: freeze and log all activity. The logs timestamped every failed authentication attempt, every rejected token, every desperate query. Proof of exactly who broke it and when. I put on my sunglasses, stepped outside into the cool afternoon air, and walked home slowly. No rush. The universe was balancing itself. By 3:07, Sasha's texts were chaos. Sasha, 3:07. "Ethan just blamed it." Sasha, 3:08. Mark said, "It's probably an AWS glitch." Sasha, 3:09. Investor lady literally said AWS doesn't forget passwords. I actually laughed out loud on the street. A full, honest laugh I hadn't felt in months. When I got home, I slipped into sweatpants, poured a glass of wine, and opened my laptop. Not my work one, my personal machine. I logged into the legacy email alias support@heliondata.internal, the one I built years ago so client issues wouldn't fall through the cracks. Mark never knew it still redirected straight to me. The inbox was glowing red. Dozens of new messages. The most recent one from Lance, Ethan's replacement on the dev team. Subject: urgent. Backend access needed. Message: system down. Can't access logs or ping servers. Getting modal retoken key required. Investors still here. Please advise ASAP. It bounced. I'd archived the alias 10 minutes before logging out for good. It was like watching them knock on the door of a building that had already been condemned. At 3:20, my phone buzzed alive for the first time. 37 missed calls. Mark, Ethan, unknown numbers. Probably PR, legal, and a few desperate assistants trying to contain the fire. I ignored them all. At 3:47, another text from Sasha. "They're falling apart. Mark told the board it's a third-party outage. Ethan said you sabotaged it. HR asked if you're still under NDA." I finished my wine and typed back, "Tell them to check the system log," because that was the final twist. Every failure, Every timeout, every rejection. All of it traced back to one signature token. L.R. Simmons' master root. It had lived quietly in the guts of the system for years. Never hidden, just ignored. Because they assumed I'd always be there. They forgot who the architect was, and now the house had locked its doors. At 6:04 p.m., I finally powered my phone back on. The screen lit up like a slot machine on fire. Slack pings, missed calls, voicemails, text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. 2 from HR, 1 from legal, and 12 from Mark, all in escalating tones of panic. The top message caught my eye. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even demanding, just desperate. Mark, please, what do you need to fix this? I stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering over the keyboard. My reflection flickered in the phone screen, calm, steady. Then I typed 2 words. Lauren. Nothing. I was never broken. No emojis, no sarcasm, just the truth. Then I put the phone face down again and turned toward my laptop. It was time to close the loop properly. I opened the folder labeled Break Glass, a name I'd picked half-jokingly years ago for emergencies no one believed would ever happen. Inside were the receipts, every log trail, merge request, timestamp, credential chain, security audit report, and Slack transcript documenting exactly who did what. There was no need for revenge when the truth already carried its own fuse. I zipped the contents into a single encrypted file, attached it to a blank email draft, and began typing my final message. To legal@heliondata.com. Subject, formal resignation plus system transition log. Dear legal team, attached, you'll find the complete audit trail related to the recent demo environment failure, including credential assignments, dashboard permissions, and back-end authentication protocols. Please note that all systems operated as designed, with no tampering or malicious interference. As of today, I am submitting my formal resignation from Helion Data Labs, effective immediately. One final request. Please remove me from the non-essential personnel list permanently. Regards, Lauren Simmons. I hit send. No hesitation, no flourish, no cinematic pause. Just done. The hum of my apartment filled the silence that followed. The refrigerator compressor clicked on. Somewhere outside, a car horn blared. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. I poured another glass of wine, opened my balcony door, and stepped out into the evening air. The skyline shimmered in the distance, office towers glowing like quiet reminders of every place that once promised growth opportunities while quietly handing my work to someone louder. In one of those towers, I knew exactly what was happening. Mark was pacing the boardroom like a caged animal, refreshing the dashboard every 10 seconds, praying it would come back to life. Ethan was probably Googling how to fix authentication token like the answer would appear in a Stack Overflow thread. HR was running damage control with investors, insisting it was just an unexpected sandbox issue. Legal was already sifting through the audit trail I'd just delivered, my name stamped across every critical function they'd tried to steal. And somewhere in the middle of it, the investors were realizing exactly how much of Helion's proprietary platform depended on one woman they'd never bothered to meet. I didn't smile. Not really. But I did breathe. A deep, unhurried breath that filled my chest and emptied out years of quiet fury. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger meant I still cared. What I felt now was cleaner, sharper, a release. The system hadn't been sabotaged. It hadn't crashed. It had done precisely what I built it to do: protect itself from unauthorized users. For once, my creation listened only to me. I leaned against the balcony rail, glass in hand, watching lights flicker across the windows of Helion's HQ. Somewhere up there, Mark was probably shouting into a muted conference call. Ethan was sweating through his dress shirt. HR was drafting a resilience statement. And me? I was watching the city hum beneath me, quietly wondering how many other women were out there, building things for people who never learned how they worked. My phone buzzed one last time. Another message from Mark. Just 3 words. Please, come back. I turned the screen off, placed it face down beside my wine, and whispered to no one in particular. You shouldn't have erased the foundation. The night air felt lighter. The silence earned. No fury, no vengeance, just engineering.